Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take the conventional wisdom about success and wealth, well, we kind of throw it into the shredder, and then tell you exactly what really works.
And today, we are definitely undertaking a critical deep dive. We're looking into what is really the definitive guide to genuine American affluence, the foundational, truly groundbreaking research compiled in the Millionaire Next Door.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It really is. And if you, like most people, picture a millionaire as someone, sipping imported champagne on a huge yacht wearing bespoke Italian leather, well, you're about to be profoundly and I think very practically corrected.
That's exactly the myth, isn't it? That pervasive Hollywood fantasy. And we're here today to shatter it, like, immediately.
Go.
Our mission today is to give you, the listener, the curious learner, who really values financial freedom, the genuine, actionable secrets of financial independence. These are pulled directly from decades of research into how wealth is actually built and maintained in this country.
It's like giving you a shortcut.
Exactly, a shortcut to the mental framework that actually produces millionaires.
And look, this research, it's the financial equivalent of a really comprehensive audit. It's not just theory, or a few motivational anecdotes.
Right, it started seriously.
Very seriously. It began as a consortium for America's top financial institutions. We're talking over 500 face-to-face interviews with high net worth individuals, plus surveys of over 11,000 affluent and high-income respondents. This is empirical evidence, hard data on American wealth accumulation.
And what I find truly fascinating is how relevant these findings still are, even today. Through major economic shifts, downturns, the research consistently proves that the millionaire next door type, well, they're still alive and kicking.
Absolutely. And they thrive precisely because they manage their investments with this unique, almost self-reliant philosophy. They just aren't victims of market volatility in the same way that maybe high-income employees are.
Why is that? What's the core difference there?
Well, it really boils down to control. The typical millionaire next door, the kind the book profiles, has less than 30%, and often it's closer to 20% of their total net worth invested in publicly traded stocks.
Oh, that's lower than I would have guessed.
It surprises a lot of people. Their wealth is tied up in assets they can actually influence. Think their own businesses, private real estate, maybe other private asset classes where they are the decision maker, not just a passive spectator watching the ticker tape.
Okay, so that focus on private ownership gives them stability and maybe tax advantages too.
Exactly. Advantages that are simply unavailable, generally speaking, to high salaried employees who just get a W-2.
Which brings us right to the profile of this archetype. So when you think millionaire, you really need to stop thinking celebrity.
Right. Start thinking about someone like Mrs. D, one of the millionaires profiled in the research. She really embodies the reality.
Tell us about Mrs.
Well, Mrs. D is a self-made woman. And her lifestyle, honestly, can only be described as aggressively frugal. She wears a Timex watch. She buys her clothes at places like JCPenney, maybe Dillard's.
Okay.
They drive Fords. In fact, they'd purchased just 2 new vehicles in the last decade when the research was done. Her haircut cost her like $18.
Wow.
Her lifestyle is, by many standards, kind of boring, maybe even common. But, and this is the crucial part, she is financially independent, she's secure, and critically, she's highly satisfied with her life.
And that satisfaction level, that's key, isn't it?
It really is. The researchers found that a full 90% of millionaires who live in homes valued under $300,000, which remember is often far below what their net worth could actually afford, are extremely satisfied with their lives.
That's a huge number.
It is. And get this, the data shows there are nearly 3 times as many millionaire households, those with $1 million or more in investments, living in these modest homes compared to those millionaires living in lavish homes valued at $1 million or more.
So that statistic just instantly reframes the whole conversation, doesn't it?
Completely. It tells us that for the true wealth builder, the goal isn't status. It's not maximal consumption. The real goal is independence.
Okay. And that brings us right to the first critical distinction we need to make.
Right. The single most fundamental misconception we have to clarify, especially if you want to become what the book calls a PAW, a prodigious accumulator of wealth, is this distinction between your income and your net worth.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's so basic but so misunderstood. Income is essentially what you spend. Wealth is what you accumulate. It's what you keep.
In our culture, it's shaped so heavily by marketing, right? It constantly conflates a high salary, high income with actually being wealthy.
Exactly. We automatically assume the person with the $300,000 salary must be rich, but honestly, they could be living paycheck to paycheck, just on a much grander, more expensive scale.
Okay, let's try and unpack the psychology there a bit. Why do most high-income Americans, immediately turn that extra cash flow into consumption? What drives that? Well, it's often hyperconsumption, and it's frequently driven by social pressure and expectations. When cash flow increases for most people, they immediately upgrade their lifestyle. It's almost automatic.
The bigger house.
The bigger house, the luxury car lease, the expensive private school tuition, the five-star vacations, all that stuff. They feel they need to keep up with the perceived standard of their high-income peer group.
But the millionaire next door types, they resist that urge.
They do. They practice what you might call financial delay. Or maybe financial discipline is a better term. They might say, live on one income and save the other if it's a dual-income household. Or more commonly, they simply save and invest pretty much every single raise they receive.
So they flatten their consumption curve, even if their earnings go way up.
That's a great way to put it. They effectively flatten their consumption curve, regardless of how high their earning curve climbs over time.
And this leads to what I think is maybe the most inspiring finding of the study.
Yeah.
This whole system, this approach, it's accessible to the vast majority of people, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the empowering part. The research consistently found over decades of study that 80% to 85% of millionaires in America are self-made, first-generation rich.
80 to 85%. That's huge.
It is. Wealth is emphatically not primarily the result of luck or massive inheritance or even having advanced professional degrees, although those things certainly don't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But fundamentally, it's the result of hard work, perseverance, rigorous planning, and maybe above all else, self-discipline, applied consistently over a long period of time.
So even if you're starting from a modest background, you genuinely have every chance. Okay, so to make this concept actionable for everyone listening right now, the researchers developed a quick tool, didn't they, for you, the listener, to assess your current performance.
Yes, the expected net worth calculation. It's often called the PAWA test.
Kawa, break that down.
Okay, this test is really designed to measure your efficiency at converting income into wealth. PAW, as we mentioned, stands for prodigious accumulator of wealth. UAW is the opposite, underaccumulator of wealth.
Got it. And how do you calculate it?
It's actually a pretty simple formula. You take your age, multiply that by your realized pre-tax annual household income. Now, be sure to exclude any large inheritances here, okay? That keeps the test pure, focused on what you've earned and saved.
Okay, age times income minus inheritance. Then what?
Then you divide that total by 10. The result you get is your expected net worth, or ENW.
Okay, so that's the benchmark. Now, how do I know if I'm a PAW or a UAW?
Right. If your actual current net worth, everything you own minus everything you owe, is double your ENW or more, then congratulations. You are officially a PAW. You're exceptionally efficient at turning your income into lasting wealth.
And the flip side.
Well, if your actual net worth is half of your ENW or less, then you fall into the UAW category, the underaccumulator of wealth.
And this test, it immediately shows you something important, doesn't it?
It really does. It reveals if your current lifestyle choices, your consumption habits, how you allocate your time and money, are actively preventing you from accumulating wealth. And this is regardless of how impressive your annual paycheck might look on paper.
Let's make this real. The book uses some great case studies to highlight this distinction. First, let's look at Charles Bobbins, the fireman. He's described as a perfect example of a PAW.
Yeah, Charles is a great case. He's 41 years old in the study, married to a secretary. Their combined annual income is pretty modest, around $55,000.
Okay, so using the formula, age 41 times $55,000 income divided by 10. His expected net worth should be around $225,500.
Right, that's what the formula predicts.
Yeah.
Yet, Charles is worth substantially more than that number. He's a textbook PAW because he and his wife possess the discipline to live a low-consumption life. They just know how to save and invest aggressively, even on that modest income.
And the security that gives them.
It's profound. His financial defense, as the book calls it, is so strong that he could sustain his family's current lifestyle for nearly 10 years without earning another single paycheck.
10 years, wow. That's real freedom. Now, let's contrast that deep security with Dr. John Ashton. He's 56 and a classic UAW.
Ah, yes, Dr. Ashton, a high-status professional. He's earning a staggering $560,000 annually. Huge income.
Okay, so applying the formula again. Age 56 times $560,000 income divided by 10. His expected net worth should be, what, over $3 million?
Well over $3 million. $3.136 million to be precise. Yet his actual net worth clocks in at only $1.1 million.
So he's way below expectation.
Severely deficient, especially relative to his income peers. He's a high-income earner, no doubt. But his high-consumption lifestyle, which he probably feels is required to maintain the facade of earning $500,000 a year, means he's fundamentally fragile financially.
How fragile?
Well, think about it. If he were suddenly unemployed, he could only sustain his current quite lavish lifestyle for maybe 2, perhaps 3 years at most, before real panic would set in.
That really illustrates the human cost of being a UAW, doesn't it? It's not just about a number on a spreadsheet. It's about a fundamental lack of freedom and security, even with a massive income.
Exactly. And it's not limited to just the professional class either. The research also contrasted James H. Ford II, who was an attorney, with Miller Bubba Richards, a mobile home dealer.
Okay, tell us about them.
Well, both men were in the same age and income cohort. They were both earning about $90,000 annually. So pretty comparable starting points financially.
So James Ford, the attorney, what was his situation?
His expected net worth, based on age and income, was about $470,000. But his actual net worth, only $226,511, a definite UAW.
Why the big gap?
The researchers specifically noted that his status needs required extremely high spending. He felt compelled, to buy the foreign luxury car, live in the prestigious home, wear the expensive clothes, basically maintain the image of successful attorney in his social circle and neighborhood.
Okay, so image maintenance was costly. What about Bubba Richards, the mobile home dealer? Same income, same age.
Bubba Richards' actual net worth was $1.1 million.
Wait, on the same income?
On the same income. He had nearly 5 times the wealth of the attorney.
That's incredible. What's the takeaway there?
The takeaway is profound, I think. Mr. Ford, the attorney, had to spend significantly more of his household's income simply to maintain and display his perceived professional status. All those high lifestyle costs, the country club memberships, the luxury car payments, the designer wardrobe, they systematically eroded his wealth accumulation efforts, year after year. It forced him into a state of financial dependency on his next paycheck.
Meanwhile, Bubba
Richards, on the other hand, well, he had a clientele that likely didn't care what kind of car he drove or what suit he wore. He didn't face the same status pressure, so he just kept his expenses low and kept accumulating wealth.
Okay, so we've clearly established that the math often shows the most successful accumulators, the pause, are not necessarily the highest earners. Now let's tackle their physical profile, because this is where that popular myth truly dissolves, isn't it? What do these millionaires actually look like?
They look, well, normal. They look like you or your neighbor, maybe the person checking out your groceries. There's a fascinating anecdote in the research about a trust officer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this officer perfectly embodied the societal fallacy about wealth. He was genuinely surprised, almost shocked, at the mundane appearance of the first-generation millionaires he met through his work.
What was he expecting?
He was expecting them to arrive in expensive limousines, wearing high-fashion clothes, dripping in status artifacts. But the irony was,
What?
the trust officer himself actually spent far more on his own daily appearance than the typical millionaire client he served. He wore like a $5,000 watch and drove a current model luxury car, which was leased, naturally.
And his clients.
Most of his millionaire clients spent less than a tenth of that $5,000 on their timepieces, and they often owned their modest cars outright, paid for. No lease payments draining their capital.
That dynamic is just perfectly captured by that Texan expression the research highlighted, the one defining the UAW type.
Oh yeah, big hat, no cattle. It's brilliant.
Explain it.
It describes the high-income, high-spending type who focuses entirely on the superficial display, the big fancy hat, but lacks the underlying capital assets, the actual cattle, to back it up. They're playing the part, putting on a show, but they don't actually own the script, so to speak.
And the counterexample to that is so powerful. Tell us about the diesel engine business owner mentioned in the book.
Right, this individual was a massive financial success, a true paw. But he completely rejected the conventional status game. He drove a 10-year-old car, he wore jeans and a simple buckskin shirt, lived in a modest house right next door to firemen and postal clerks.
So his focus wasn't on impressing anyone.
Not at all. His focus was entirely on his productive business and his own personal financial security. He saw zero value in playing the part just for the benefit of others or to meet some societal expectation.
And this frugality, it's not just an accident or some isolated quirk, is it? It's presented as a systemic financial strategy.
Absolutely. The research provides amazing hard data on exactly how little the typical millionaire next door actually spends on consumption items that are usually used to signal status.
Okay, give us some specifics, because these are often quite shocking.
They really are. Let's talk about professional attire, like suits. The typical American millionaire surveyed reported spending $399 or less for their most expensive suit.
$399 or less for the most expensive one.
Exactly. And the self-made millionaires, the ones who really understood the power of capital efficiency, were even more frugal. They paid about $360 on average for their best suit.
How does that compare to inheritors?
Inheritors who maybe didn't build the wealth themselves generally paid significantly more, often over $600 for their top suit.
And where are these frugal millionaires shopping? We're not talking Savile Row, are we?
Definitely not. The research specifically mentioned department stores that are, let's say, not known for luxury labels. Places like J.C. Penney were explicitly named.
J.C. Penney.
Yes. And the book notes that J.C. Penney was actually lauded by a leading consumer publication around that time for the durability, fit, and excellent value of their private brand suits.
So the motivation is value, not brand prestige.
Precisely. The motivation for the Millionaire Next Door is maximizing value and investment potential, not maximizing brand visibility or impressing strangers.
And does this commitment to frugality extend to other personal items? Watches, shoes?
Absolutely. It's consistent across the board. Think about personal accessories, which are so often used as markers of social status. Watches, for example. Half of all the millionaires surveyed had never spent more than $235 on a wristwatch in their entire lives.
$235? That's not a Rolex.
Not even close. And shoes? Half never spent more than $140 on a pair of shoes. Again, this isn't because they're intrinsically opposed to quality. They just fundamentally refuse to pay the exorbitant markups associated with high fashion labels or perceived status symbols.
So the internal calculation is,
The calculation is always, will this purchase actually increase my net worth long term? Or will it simply increase my social visibility temporarily? And they consistently choose the former. They prioritize wealth building over status display.
Okay, so demographically, who are these people? What defines the typical profile?
The prototypical American millionaire, based on the extensive research, is typically a 57-year-old male. He's usually married to the same woman for a long time, and they have, on average, 3 children.
Okay, pretty stable family life. What about occupation? This seems crucial.
It is absolutely crucial. 2/3 of them are self-employed.
2/3?
Yes. And importantly, they are often entrepreneurs, running what might seem like low profile, but are actually very productive businesses. Think welding companies, mobile home sales, used car dealerships, pest control services.
So not necessarily the high-status professions like corporate lawyers or investment bankers?
Often not. While some are professionals, the majority are business owners in these often unglamorous but profitable niches. They work long, dedicated hours, typically between 25 and 55 hours per week, and they are absolute masters of financial defense, annually investing nearly 20% of their realized household income.
20% invested year in, year out. That's discipline.
That's the engine of wealth accumulation right there. They aren't waiting for a handout or a lucky break or a lottery ticket. They are, in many ways, the quiet engine of American commerce. And their financial success stems directly from 7 foundational characteristics the researchers identified.
Okay, 7 foundational characteristics. This sounds like the core playbook.
It really is. Through that incredibly deep investigation, the 500 interviews, the 11,000 surveys, the researchers managed to synthesize 7 common denominators. These are characteristics shared by pretty much everyone who successfully builds and maintains wealth in the Millionaire Next Door style.
And these aren't just suggestions, are they? They're presented as the proven pillars.
Exactly. Think of them as the pillars of that lifestyle.
Okay, let's listen first. Maybe we can dig into a few key ones.
Sure. Number 1, they live well below their means. Obvious, but critical.
Okay.
Number 2, they allocate their time, energy, and money efficiently in ways that are specifically conducive to building wealth.
Makes sense. Number 3.
Number 3, they believe that financial independence is far more important than displaying high social status.
Right, we've touched on that. 4.
Number 4, their parents typically did not provide substantial economic outpatient care, or EOC. We'll definitely need to unpack EOC later.
Okay. Number 5.
Number 5, their adult children are, generally speaking, economically self-sufficient. This links back to number 4.
Got it. 6.
Number 6, they are proficient in targeting market opportunities. They know how to find a niche.
And finally, number 7.
Number 7, they chose the right occupation. And as we just discussed, that often means they are self-employed business owners operating in profitable niches.
Okay, looking at that list, the recurring theme just jumps out, doesn't it? It's self-discipline, independence, long-term thinking.
Absolutely.
Let's focus specifically on number one and number three for a moment. Living below their means and valuing that independence over status. Why is rejecting the status game so absolutely fundamental to achieving real financial security?
Because status display is essentially a black hole for capital. It
Yeah.
just sucks money away from productive uses. The motivation for the true wealth builder, the paw, is security, it's freedom, it's the peace of mind that comes from knowing you are in control of your financial future, not dependent on the next paycheck or impressing the neighbors.
And when you prioritize displaying
Well,
status,
when you prioritize the expensive car, the brand name clothes, the lavish parties, you're effectively outsourcing your self-worth to external validation. And that necessitates spending future capital today. You're trading long-term security for short-term appearances.
this is perfectly demonstrated by that anecdote about Mr. W. Allen. He was described as a superpaw, right? His net worth was more than 10 times what was expected for his age and income.
Yeah, Mr. Allen was a master accumulator, an absolute legend in the book. And he was offered this fantastic, very high-status gift.
Where was it?
He was offered a brand new Rolls-Royce by some grateful entrepreneurs he had successfully mentored. I mean, for many people, that's the ultimate status symbol, isn't it? The pinnacle of success validation.
Absolutely. So what did Mr. Allen do? He must have been thrilled.
He rejected it, turned it down flat.
He refused a free Rolls Royce. That seems almost rude, or at least bad for networking, maybe. Why would he sacrifice that perceived prestige?
He refused it for two really powerful, interconnected reasons. First, he just flatly stated that owning a Rolls-Royce would conflict with his simple, efficient lifestyle. Period. He did not want to change the way he lived.
He recognized it would be disruptive.
Exactly. He recognized that acquiring one major status artifact often requires acquiring others to match. You get
Right.
roles, maybe you feel you need a more expensive home with a bigger garage to house it, more expensive clothes to drive it in. Maybe you start hanging out with new friends who expect a higher level of spending. Before you know it, that one free gift can change your entire lifestyle and potentially dismantle the wealth-building momentum you've carefully built over decades.
Wow. So it was really an act of psychological and financial self-defense.
Precisely. And his second reason was more social. He felt that driving such an obviously expensive vehicle would alienate his workers, maybe make them feel exploited or undervalued.
That's insightful.
It shows a deep understanding of human nature and business relationships. He understood that wealth accumulation is a long-term game built on consistency, trust, and relationships. Preserving his own internal equilibrium and his external business relationships was far more valuable to him than the fleeting status a luxury car might provide.
That really shifts the conversation away from just being cheap towards being strategically thoughtful, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's about conscious choices aligned with long-term goals.
Now, looking back at the list, points number 4 and 5 about economic outpatient care, or EOC. This seems critical and maybe a bit uncomfortable for some families. It suggests that financial success isn't just about what you do, but also maybe about what you don't do for your adult kids financially.
It's a huge finding, and yes, often uncomfortable. The research makes it very clear that parents who shower their adult children with excessive financial gifts frequently, maybe unintentionally, sabotage their children's own ability to accumulate wealth independently.
We definitely need to dig into EOC more later.
We will, but just the fact that it's included in these top 7 factors, the importance of raising economically self-sufficient adults, shows that wealth is often best transferred not through direct cash, but through the transmission of values, discipline, frugality, work ethic.
Right. And finally, number 6 and 7, targeting market opportunities and choosing the right occupation. It underscores that it's not enough just to be frugal. You also have to be productive and strategic in generating income in the first place.
Correct. Frugality is defense, but you need offense too. The self-employed, especially business owners, because they face the risks and reap the rewards directly, tend to be constantly looking for undervalued or underserved markets. They're not necessarily geniuses, but they are disciplined in executing the basics. Find a profitable niche, run it efficiently, and then, crucially, save and invest a significant portion of the profits, that 20% we talked about.
So they understand their occupation is the engine.
And frugality is the high-octane fuel needed to keep that investment machine running powerfully over the long haul.
Okay, let's really hammer this point home. Defense is paramount.
We absolutely must establish this clearly. High income, which you might call great offense, is simply not enough to guarantee wealth. In fact, the researchers saw so many people who earn high five or even low six-figure incomes, but they consistently lose the game called wealth accumulation.
Why? What's the failure point?
They play terrible defense. Their spending is out of control relative to their wealth-building goals. It's that hyperconsumption pattern again.
So, true wealth accumulation must start with great defense. And that defense is anchored firmly by, well, things that aren't very glamorous. Meticulous budgeting and planning.
Exactly. And the research brought up Mrs. Jane Rule as a perfect example of this defensive mindset in action.
Tell us about Mrs. Rule. What did she do?
Mrs. Rule was an auctioneer and appraiser. Her income averaged about $90,000 a year. Comfortable for sure, but not extraordinary by high-income standards.
But her net worth.
Her net worth was over $2 million. She was a definite paw, a prodigious accumulator of wealth. And she achieved it through relentless discipline. She budgeted annually. She knew exactly how much her family spent on core categories like food, clothing, and shelter, down to the penny practically.
And that level of granular control, that's highly unusual, isn't it? Especially among the high-income group who aren't yet wealthy.
It is remarkably unusual. The data confirm this quite clearly. Almost two-thirds of the millionaires, surveyed 62.4%, answered yes when asked if they know how much their household spends on food, clothing, and shelter annually.
Okay, nearly two-thirds of millionaires track that. What about high-income non-millionaires?
Only about 35% of them did. That's a huge difference. The UAWs, the underaccumulators, often only track things that are tax deductible, like their mortgage interest or maybe some business expenses. They completely ignore the critical leak in their financial boat, that non-deductible consumption spending that just drains their resources.
Okay, but Mrs. Rule must have found that annual budgeting process incredibly tedious, right? I mean, who enjoys that? Why sustain that kind of effort year after year?
She admitted it was tedious, no question. But her discipline wasn't just willpower. It was fueled by a very powerful long-term motivation.
Which was?
Budgeting and tabulating all that consumption was directly related to her clear goal of achieving financial independence by age 65. And maybe even more importantly, it was about reducing financial fear and worry in her life.
So it had an emotional payoff.
A huge one. When she forced herself to sit down and review the numbers, she didn't just see spreadsheets. She visualized the long-term benefit, like being able to fully fund her grandchildren's education. This kind of emotional, focused visualization is what sustained the necessary, sometimes boring year-round discipline.
So it's not just about managing the money, but also about how you allocate your most precious non-renewable resource, their time and energy. Where do the PAWs spend their planning time compared to the UAWs?
This is another critical differentiator. The PAWs, the wealth builders, allocate nearly double the hours per month compared to UAWs when it comes to financial matters. We're talking an average of 8.4 hours per month spent on financial planning, studying investment decisions, actively managing their current investments.
8.4 hours a month. And the UAWs?
They spend, on average, about 4.6 hours per month, less than half the time.
So what's the key takeaway there? Consistency, priority.
Both. It's about consistency and priority. There's this pervasive myth out there that you need like 20 hours a week to properly manage your money, and who has time for that? But the research shows that's not true. Consistent, focused effort, maybe just 2 hours every weekend, is what actually works and makes a difference.
And UAWs make excuses.
UAWs often express worry about being too busy to handle their investments properly. PAWs, on the other hand, consciously place asset management and financial planning before other discretionary activities. It's a priority.
And we can see this divergence of time, energy, and money allocation really clearly illustrated in vehicle purchases, can't we? The research identifies cars as a major wealth killer for UAWs.
Oh, absolutely. The vehicle purchase is like the perfect status trap, designed to separate people from their capital. The data is decisive and really eye-opening. 50% of the millionaires studied had never spent more than $29,000 on a motor vehicle in their entire lives.
Never more than $29,000. That's well below the average new car price today.
Way below. And they are typically what the book calls used vehicle-prone shoppers. They fundamentally understand that by buying a quality used car, maybe 2 or 3 years old, they avoid the instantaneous and largest depreciation hit. That allows their capital, the money they didn't spend on the new car premium, to remain invested and productive.
And this used vehicle-prone group, they have better financial outcomes overall.
Significantly better. This group has the highest ratio of net worth dollars accumulated for each dollar of income earned. It proves the point. They prioritize financial defense over status display.
Okay, now let's bring back Dr. South, our high-income UAW friend. He perfectly illustrates the opposite approach, doesn't he? especially regarding misallocated energy.
Oh, Dr. South is the cautionary tale here. Remember, he was the one earning big bucks but way behind on net worth. He reportedly spent 60 or more hours aggressively bargain hunting for his $65,000 Porsche.
60 hours hunting for a deal on a Porsche.
Yes. Think about that huge investment of his valuable time and mental energy dedicated solely to acquiring a rapidly depreciating consumption item. And while he was pouring all that effort into trying to save maybe a few $1,000s on a status car, guess how much he managed to put into his pension plan that entire year?
I'm afraid to ask.
Only $5,700.
Wow.
His time, his energy, his focus, his money,
Yeah.
it was almost completely devoted to the acquisition and maintenance of a high-status lifestyle, which was, of course, entirely counterproductive to actually accumulating long-term wealth.
Whereas the Pauls.
The pause, conversely, would simply allocate that spare time, those 60 hours, to wealth-enhancing activities, researching investments, planning their finances, maybe working on their business, not on consumption maintenance. It's a fundamental difference in priorities.
Okay, next up, we need to tackle what might be the most uncomfortable finding in the book for many affluent families. It's the hidden cost of parental generosity, what the researchers controversially termed economic outpatient care, or EOC.
Yes, EOC. This is a behavioral factor that the research strongly suggests actively undermines wealth accumulation, often across generations.
So what exactly is economic outpatient care? Define it for us.
EOC is defined as substantial, regular economic gifts and financial assistance given by affluent parents to their adult children. We're not talking about pocket money for teenagers here. We're talking about significant cash gifts, paying tuition for graduate or professional schools, providing hefty down payments for homes, or regularly buying them cars, stuff like that.
Okay, sounds generous. What's the problem?
The research reveals a very strong and maybe counterintuitive negative correlation. The more dollars adult children receive from their parents in the form of EOC, the fewer dollars they tend to accumulate themselves. They become less wealthy, not more.
So this is where good intentions can really backfire, isn't it? It seems logical if someone is constantly subsidizing your consumption, you never develop that muscle of financial self-reliance.
That's exactly it. You come to expect a certain high level of living, whether or not your own earnings can actually support it.
So EOC acts like a funnel.
Right into consumption. It acts as an immediate funnel, precipitating spending rather than encouraging saving or investing. Over time, it creates a habit of dependency. And the book illustrates this vividly with the case study of Mary and Lamar.
Tell us about Mary and Lamar.
Okay, Lamar is a college administrator. Their earned household income is actually quite modest, less than $60,000 annually in the study.
Okay, 60K. But how do they live?
Well, on the surface, they live what appears to be a comfortable upper-middle-class lifestyle. They send their kids to private school, they live in a nice home in an upscale neighborhood, they drive luxury foreign cars that get replaced every 3 years.
On a $60 K income, how is that possible? It sounds like a complete facade.
It is entirely and very precariously subsidized by Mary's parents. Her mother provided a massive down payment for their home and then continued to make their monthly mortgage payments. She also regularly gave Mary gifts of stock.
And what did Mary and Lamar do with those stock gifts? Invest them wisely?
Nope. Their consistent response was to immediately sell those securities to fund more high-status consumption, usually purchasing those new luxury cars we mentioned.
So they're completely economically dependent.
Totally dependent, financially fragile, and already mentally budgeting their future inheritance for current or near-future spending. The book mentions they anticipate using the inheritance for a bigger home, a vacation home, and around-the-world travel. Their entire financial orientation is just focused on spending money they haven't even received yet.
Now, contrast that scenario with the case of Sarah. The researchers called her the disinherited Cinderella, right?
Yes, Sarah's story is powerful. Her father was extremely affluent, a multi-millionaire. Yet he never provided Sarah, who was herself a successful executive, with any significant EOC.
But he helped her sister.
Yes, instead, he favored her economically dependent sister Alice, who received constant subsidies from him. Alice was always struggling financially, and the father kept bailing her out or propping her up.
And the outcome of this difference in treatment?
It's both tragic and telling. By withholding subsidies from Sarah, the strong daughter, her father unknowingly forced her to become highly self-reliant, incredibly disciplined with money, and ultimately a prodigious accumulator of wealth herself, a paw.
And Alice, the weaker one.
Meanwhile, the father continually subsidized Alice, effectively creating a lifelong dependent. The research conclusion was pretty stark. The father had strengthened the strong daughter while actively weakening the weaker one through his patterns of giving.
Wow. So the core lesson here isn't necessarily to be punitive or ungenerous, is it? It seems more about channeling any support productively. Subsidies earmarked purely for consumption just seem to dampen initiative.
Precisely. That's the key distinction. The most positive and effective forms of EOC identified in the research were those that specifically built productive capacity in the children,
Like what?
like subsidizing education, especially valuable graduate or professional degrees that increase earning power, or earmarking gifts specifically for legitimate business startups. The book notes the story of Paul Orfalea, the founder of Kinko's. His initial $5,000 business loan was co-signed by his father. That is productive support. It encourages growth, calculated risk-taking, and self-sufficiency.
But just handing over cash for lifestyle inflation.
Cash gifts intended primarily for consumption, however well-intentioned, tend to destroy the incentive to achieve independently. They become habit-forming in a negative way.
So the rule for affluent parents, which seems crucial for the long-term legacy of wealth in a family, should really be the best gifts are often free, or at least not just cash.
Exactly. The best gifts often involve teaching discipline, financial management skills, the value of frugality, and fostering independent achievement. It's about preparing children for economic realities, not sheltering them from them indefinitely.
Okay, we noted earlier that a huge proportion, like two-thirds of the millionaires studied, were self-employed. This seems like a really powerful factor, and it leads directly into our next discussion, choosing the right occupation and mastering investment strategy.
Yes, that self-employment factor is key.
Yeah.
The self-employed often spend far more time planning their investments and particularly their pension plans because, well, they have to. They must rely solely on themselves for their future financial security. There's no big corporation managing a pension fund for them.
Right. That pressure creates a kind of built-in discipline that maybe a salaried employee who often just assumes their employer will handle their future through a 401k or something might lack.
Exactly. But there's also a distinct difference the research found in the type of business that affluent parents, those who've already built wealth, tend to push their kids toward.
Hmm.
It centers on this idea of intellectual assets versus physical assets.
Okay, portable intellect versus fixed assets. Break that down for us.
Well, think about it. A first-generation millionaire might have built their fortune on a business heavily reliant on fixed assets. Maybe a factory, a coal mining operation, a traditional retail store with lots of inventory.
Okay, tangible stuff.
Right. But affluent parents who accumulated that wealth often encourage their children to become self-employed professionals.
Yeah.
Doctors, specialized lawyers, certified accountants, high-end consultants.
Why that preference for professions over owning a more traditional business? What's the underlying risk difference they perceive?
Fixed assets are inherently vulnerable. A business composed primarily of machinery, land, or physical inventory can potentially be taken by creditors if things go wrong. It could be seized through government action, like eminent domain, or its value destroyed by cyclical economic downturns or sudden environmental regulations. It's fixed, it's tangible, and it's subject to external controls and risks. The ultimate fear is that they can take your business.
But the intellect, the professional knowledge.
Intellect is portable. It's secure in a different way. A skilled physician, a highly specialized legal consultant, or a successful accountant can essentially take their knowledge and expertise anywhere in the world. They're selling their knowledge, their brain power, which is much more difficult to seize or regulate out of existence.
And does profitability play a role too?
Oh, absolutely. The profitability metrics strongly support this preference. While a traditional sole proprietorship might generate very high gross sales, the overhead costs, inventory, equipment, rent, employees can be absolutely immense.
But professional services, they tend to be incredibly efficient from a cost perspective.
Extremely efficient. The average return on receipts, basically the profit margin for professional services, is often far higher. The book gives the example of a physician's office having an average return on receipts of about 56.2%.
Wow, over half.
Yeah. This means they need far less gross revenue to achieve the same high net income compared to many traditional businesses. This grants them massive operational efficiency and crucially generates more free capital to invest.
Okay, so they generate the capital efficiently. Now let's look at how the typical millionaire next door actually invests that accumulated wealth. The book stresses they invest in what they know.
Yes, they overwhelmingly follow the principle of domain expertise. They stick to their knitting, so to speak. Dr. North, the paw physician we mentioned earlier, is a good example. He primarily invests in things like medical stocks, farmland in his region, and maybe specialized medical equipment financing companies.
Why those specific areas?
Because he has deep domain expertise in those areas from his professional life. His investment decisions are informed by his firsthand understanding of supply, demand, regulatory changes, and future trends within his industry. He's effectively applying the same business acumen he uses daily in his medical practice to his personal investment portfolio.
But the UAWs, like our friend Dr. South, who bought the Porsche, they don't do that, do they? They're described as chasing flavors of the month.
Precisely. Dr. South is the perfect contrast. He had active accounts with 4 different full-service brokerage firms, yet his total holdings in securities were less than $200,000, despite his huge income.
So where was the disconnect?
He was completely reactive. He was responding to cold calls from brokers he didn't know, entering markets late based on media hype he didn't fully understand, and then often exiting too early out of fear during downturns. He was constantly churning his account, losing money to commissions, fees, and just plain poor timing.
How much did that advice cost him?
The book states he spent over $35,000 in a single year just for advice and trades related to his poorly performing portfolio. Meanwhile, Dr. North, the paw, who invested based on his own knowledge, spent zero on such advice because he made his own educated decisions or used very low-cost methods.
So the UAW trusts the outside expert almost indiscriminately, perhaps hoping for a magic bullet, while the paw trusts their own informed research and diligence.
That's a great summary of the difference in approach.
This naturally brings us to how the millionaires next door actually vet any outside help they do use. It sounds like they treat hiring a financial advisor much like they'd hire a key employee for their business.
That is the perfect analogy. High net worth business owners are inherently experts at evaluating suppliers, vetting potential partners, and assessing human resources. They simply apply this same rigorous discipline to managing their personal finances.
And the book gives the example of Mr. Martin, the multimillionaire investor. He had a specific method for dealing with cold calling brokers, didn't he?
Yes, the Martin method. When brokers he didn't know pitched him investment ideas over the phone, he had a standard response.
Which was?
He politely asked them to submit copies of their personal income tax returns and their personal investment portfolio history for the past 3 years.
He asked for their financials.
Yes. He wanted tangible proof of their own financial success and discipline before he would even consider trusting them with a dime of his money.
That's a completely logical request from a business owner's perspective, demanding verifiable credentials, like checking references for an employee. And I'm betting not many brokers actually complied with that level of scrutiny.
According to the book, 0 did. Not one ever submitted their personal documentation. Mr. Martin's reasoning was simple and shrewd. If these guys were really that good at investing, they wouldn't need to spend all their time cold calling strangers like me.
Huh. Makes sense.
So the key lesson here is really about the mindset. Operate your household finances, your investments, your retirement portfolio with the same diligence and efficiency as you would run a productive business. And if you do need external help, don't rely on cold calls. Seek referrals from trusted sources within strong professional networks like maybe enlightened CPAs who demonstrably have other clients who consistently achieve high levels of success with their investment portfolios. Find advisors through proven results, not slick pitches.
It really all comes back to applying that diligence, that self-reliance, and that relentless efficiency of a successful business owner to your personal financial life. #tag outro. Okay, so after digging through all of this, what does this entire deep dive into the Millionaire Next Door really mean for you, the listener, right now, today?
Well, I think the core message is actually quite hopeful. We've seen that the path to genuine financial independence is incredibly accessible to many people. It's not reserved for the lucky few or the extravagantly paid.
There's always a but.
There is. It requires discipline. It requires, often, the sacrifice of high consumption today for security tomorrow. And it absolutely requires strategic, consistent, long-term planning.
It really is fundamentally a game of defense over offense, isn't it?
That's the crux of it. You absolutely must prioritize accumulating and protecting your wealth over simply spending and displaying your income. The real millionaire next door is not the flashy figure the media often presents.
No.
They are the frugal, often hardworking, frequently self-employed planner who meticulously manages their time, their energy, and their money, specifically to ensure that they are buying their freedom bit by bit, year after year.
So if you listening are willing to make those necessary trade-offs, maybe the reliable used car instead of the crippling luxury lease payment, maybe enduring the tedious but ultimately rewarding annual budgeting session instead of just letting spending happen carelessly.
Then you can absolutely begin building your own fortune. Just as the 80 to 85% of self-made millionaires profiled in this research have done across America, the path is surprisingly clear, really. The choice, at the end of the day, is yours to make.
We'll leave you with this final, maybe provocative thought to chew on. It comes straight from an entrepreneur quoted in the research. He was explaining his philosophy on risk to a group of corporate executives.
Yeah, this one really makes you think. He asked them simply, what is risk? And then he answered his own question, having one source of income.
Wow. Let that sink in.
Right. Think about that for a moment. The typical employee may be relying entirely on a single paycheck from a single corporation. A corporation that could restructure, downsize, or pivot its strategy tomorrow is often at a much higher, far less diversified financial risk
Then who?
than a diversified business owner who actively deals with risk, opportunity, and often multiple income streams every single day. It flips the conventional wisdom about job security on its head.
So the challenge to you, the listener, is this. Take a hard look at your current employment and income situation. Evaluate it through this lens of diversified income streams and the strength of your financial defense. You might just be surprised where your real financial fragility lies.